This video demonstrates two features that make debugging and testing your plugin, your tab plugin, much simpler. The first, normally when you make a change to your plugin's code, you'd have to compile the jar file, you'd have to go find your jar file, you'd have to copy it to the demo. You'd have to copy that jar to the tabs folder of the Logviewer program directory, and you'd have to do this for each and every change that you made, and this can get really tedious. It's a really long compilation process and moving folders around. There's a way to tell Logviewer to look at a certain directory for your plugin so that you don't have to do the copy and pasting. Let me show you. So you go to the Logviewer program directory, this one. You create a file called plugins.ini. It has to be called plugins.ini. Open it. The first thing you do, and I'll show you how to create this, is you type a one-word identifier, no special characters, no spaces, space, and then follow that by the folder in which your compiler or your IDE automatically puts the compiled jar file into. So NetBeans always puts the jar file in the dist folder located in the project every time it compiles. So I just put the random word, a space, and then that folder. I'm going to save that file. Now I'm going to go to tabs, and I'm going to delete sample.jar. So I technically uninstalled sample.jar. Let's see what happens when I start Logviewer. Sample.jar is still here. I can open it. This is because any folders listed in plugins.ini, any folders listed here, are searched for plugins when the program starts. So I can specify extra folders to look for the plugin. So this way I don't have to keep copying stuff. And then whenever I made a change here, all I need to do is compile, restart Logviewer without doing any moving of jars, because I specify for Logviewer to look in this folder for the newly compiled jar automatically. And that's in the plugins.ini file in the right in the same folder as logviewer.jar. Oh, I forgot to mention in the previous video that when you install a plugin, you don't need to do anything with these. These are from the Logviewer project. You just copy them here for compilation purposes, but you don't actually need to copy them anywhere to use them. Okay, the next feature I will show is the loaded from program dir. Now this method is called whenever Logviewer opens up the tab from the tabs folder. So if sample.jar was located in here, Logviewer would call this function when sample.jar was loaded. But because sample.jar was loaded from the plugins.ini, and it was located in another folder, it wasn't located in the program directory. So this function was never called. Why is this useful? Let me show you an example. So this is another plugin that I developed, a code plugin that you can see. Here is its factory implementation. As you can see, when I called the program, or when it's loaded from program dir, it says this boolean to true. and you can use this in different places. For example, if you want the name to display a little bit differently when it's being debugged and tested and not actually installed, I did that here. So this is the normal string that users see when it's installed properly, but if it's not installed and it's called from plugins.ini, it adds the word debug to the end of the string. The other thing you can see is that if it was, the other thing it's used for is to specify dependencies. Now dependencies usually specify the whole file name. For example, in the sample project we specified the entire file path of general.jar, but often files will either be distributed with your jar file, or it may be on different places for different computers. So often you want to use a relative file path. You can do that by using the get plugins dirs. If you get api.getPluginsDirs.getTabs, it's located in this package from Logviewer.jar. If you get tabs, it'll return the full file path of the tabs folder. So then, for example, the code plugin uses jdiff.jar. So wherever the tabs folder was on the computer, it would load jdiff.jar from code folder, which is located in the same tabs folder. Now, sometimes you're debugging, and when you debug, it won't be located in this tabs folder with a name that you choose. Sometimes the compiler will spit it. Usually what NetBeans does is it puts the external libraries in a folder called lib inside the dist, so any external libraries you use would be here. And in that case, you could say get plugin dirs.get, use that special identifier you used earlier, because that identifier, let's see, when you use that identifier, you specify this folder, and so whenever you get that identifier, in the case that we did before, it'd be blah blah. When you get that identifier, it will be the equivalent of the full path name of the folder specified after the identifier in plugins.ini, and then you can just specify whatever different path needed. So this will, to the user, they see no difference if you leave this code in there. If they install it properly, it'll try to load it'll load external libraries from the tabs folder. This is a system defined one. These plugins are user defined, this is system defined, and it'll display this regular name. If you're debugging it and you're just letting NetBeans drop it where it compiles and you're just loading it from there so you don't have to copy and paste, then you can use your own identifier and you can change the program name or do whatever else you want using that boolean which was set and loaded from program dir. So two features. The first is plugins. To summarize, there's two features. The first is plugins.ini, so you don't have to copy the plugins, the plugin jar file you create each time into the tabs folder. You don't have to reinstall every time you compile. And the second one is loaded from program dir and relative file paths, which use plugins.ini also, or the system defined tabs identifier.